So tonight's topic is the Sefer Manos Halevi. The Sefer Manos Halevi was written by Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz. He's most famous to us because of the Piyut Lecha Dodi. The Piyut Lecha Dodi, he's buried in Tzfas. He wrote this Piyut, but he also wrote Svarim. And his most famous Sefer, without a doubt, is Manos Halevi, a comprehensive pirush on the entirety of the Megilas Esther, that was first published about 10 years after he passed away in the year 1585, in the year Shin Mem Hey. And on the top right you have an image of the first print from the Hakdama, and it's actually, he gives a little background about why he wrote this Sefer. There's some similarities to the other Sefer that we looked at last week, the Mechir Yayim from the Ramah, written in the same century. So he writes like this: Hakdama Divrei Shlomo, Bir Megilas Esther. This is an explanation of the Megillah. Hevantiv, Chibartiv, Yesadativ, Afasitiv. You see he's playing off of Psukim here. I've come to understand. I was Mechaber. I authored. I made it. Ani Shlomo Halevi ben Alkabetz. So from the family of Alkabetz. By the way, his Zayda was by the same name, Shlomo Alkabetz. And his Zayda is famous, less famous than him, but in the world of Svarim, his Zayda is very famous. Because his Zayda had a printing press in Spain right before the expulsion, 10 years before, opened in 1480, 81, 82, something like that. He printed a whole bunch of Svarim there, the oldest Haggadah that we have. What was that?
Gerona?
I don't believe it was in Gerona. I believe it was in Guadala Majara. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, something like that. And he printed their Svarim. He printed Haggadah Shal Pesach, that's the oldest known Haggadah today, and he printed other Svarim as well. So this is Zayda. Anyways, he says, Yuval Shai, this is a present, L'chvoid Yekar Tiferes Choisni Gvir V'nale, in honor of my Shver. L'shem u'l'sehila reidiv staka v'chesed ha'navain, Kvoid Harav Yitzchak, V'hu Koyen L'keil Elyon. So he himself was a Levi, his Shver was a Koyen, and he wrote the Sefer as a matana for his Shver. If you want to impress your Shver, by the way, this is what you do, you write a Sefer like this. Kasher Chavolim Naflu Li Bani Imois, Chalkoi V'garaloi. When he's playing on a pasuk here in Tillim. But the point is that I ended up to being associated with him. Af nachas bitoy shafra aloy, and I had his daughter's hand in marriage. Vatahili li isha, it sounds like he was already married. Uva'ad, and before, this is Hey Shin Lamed Ches, hashiluach, hashaloyach, something like that, with Rosh Tevis symbol. But it means it's just, Rosh Tevis then meant you were underlining it. Asher yishluchu abachurim b'yoim Purim, the young people send gifts on Purim. I'm not entirely what's up as Bachurim, but that's what he writes. The young people are sending books. So Shilachti Biruzeh Shiluach Elav Ve'ekra Shmoi, and I call his name Manos Halevi. So everyone's sending things. Everyone's sending gifts on Purim, and you'll see why. I'm going to send the Sefer, and he writes Manos. This is the first page of the Hakdama. Prat leprat elef hashishi. So if you do the math, prat le'elef hashishi is 15. 20. What is pay? Tafresh pay. Yes, it's 289. So reish is 14. 40, 14. 60. It's God. What's the math here?
What are you supposed to add?
No, it's Hayalafim, Reish, Pei Tet. So it's like Tafresh, it's 20. So it's 1529. That's what comes out. 1529. Alright, so it wasn't printed until much later. So it's 1529 when he wrote the Sefer. But as you can tell, it wasn't printed till after he passed away. The first print was in 1580 something. So he was a relatively young person when he wrote the Sefer because of fine. Now, what's up is he's sending a Sefer that I'm not gonna torture you with the Tfus Rishon. I have a Chavivas for a Tfus Rishon, but I'm not gonna do it for all the reading. So most of it I'm bringing from others. So continue. Then he continues in the Hakdama and he writes like this: Nu'um Hatzoyer Shlomo ben Ladoni Achacham Hashalom Arinu Arav Moshe. His father's name was Moshe ben Achacham Hashalom Chassid Shlomo Halevi ben Alkabetz Zechrein L'Chayel Mabah, who's the Zayda I told you about before. So he writes here more elaborate. Hashem ibeten kraini ploini lebas ploini. He's referring, he's basing off Psukim Amare Chazal, but basically God dictated I'm going to marry a certain girl. V'ruach kel nisasani, and God directed me. Al beis ish yamini. I don't know why he calls his husband his wife's family, Beis Ish Yemini. Uvetzel Yemini Hachbienis. I start hanging out with him. Omar Yomer Eved Avti Adoni, and I really like him. Vatabeit Eini Beito Zmani, and I look around at the time. What the time of the year is? Eis Doidim, a time of love. Mishloach Manos, Kesef Ezav, and Migdanis with the same Shainos. It's time of sending out gifts and gold and silver. It looks like Purim. Maybe I don't know. Someone could look into the Minhagim that there was more than just Mishloach Manos. People would send more elaborate gifts of gold and silver. Okay, Purim. I'm talking about the time of Purim. Nasim and Eskarim. Everyone's greeting each other with Shmechol Dikapanim. Kishachot Chaverim. Everyone's happy. But I looked at my own life. And I'm weak with Haveris. What am I going to bring to my shver? What am I going to bring that's going to represent myself? At night, I'm talking to myself at night. I could bring him. What am I going to bring him? I have no present. Is it going to be enough? I'm not entirely sure to read each of these things, but the Kabbalah's panim for my shver is not going to be tzum zachat. It's atef ruchi bekirbi, and so I felt weak. Sounds like he's fasting. If you take that literal, libi mishpachas hachamuli. No clue why he says that. Yoshiv amara v'yoreini v'yomer l'ruchi. So something tells me shlachi no yodcha va'achazeh b'chanfe Megilas Esther sham tenas. So you're going to be saved by Megilas Esther. So basically, he's giving more information than he gave in the beginning. In the beginning of the Akdama, he just said he's sending this as a gift to Shver, and here he's basically saying that everyone's sending to their friends and their family gold and silver and hot garnish. So that we saw the Ramah last time he said Shalachti Lamana. So maybe you could say also he didn't have anything, but here he's pasha poor. He is poor, and it looks like his Shver is a rich guy, and he doesn't have anything to give, so he decides I'm going to write a sefer and I'm going to give it to my shver. So that's what he does. Okay, some places I saw saying that he gave it to his wife, but this is not correct information based on what you're seeing here. He did not give it to his wife. Okay, so what we're going to do during this shir is like this. Now that we have the Hagdama behind us, we're going to look at 5 or 6 passages from the Manos Halevi. It's a huge sefer. Huge. You go through the whole Megillah, and it's a long, long, long pirush. And for one of the beautiful things about the sefer, he quotes a lot of people that came before him. You're going to see there's some chachamim whose svarim we completely lost, we don't have, and they're saved because he quotes. Usually a typical pirush on Mikra doesn't very often, definitely in this generation, wasn't common to quote from everyone. He quotes from 30, 40 different people that came before him. So we'll look at 5 or 6 different, and the ones we'll look at, like we did last week, are passages that are brought in the Rebbe's Torah. Sometimes the Rebbe is commenting on it, sometimes the Rebbe is elaborating, sometimes the Rebbe is disagreeing. On the Mechir Yayin, the Rebbe quotes very few times. At the end of the day, it's a philosophy sefer, and so it's very different. But Manos Halevi goes through the pshat of the whole Megillah. He also does deeper layers, but he goes through the pshat. So the Rebbe is quoting Manos Halevi many, many, many times. So I have to choose the ones where there is going into a little bit of the oimek, and that's what I attempted to do. So the first piece over here is the Hakdama. In his Hakdama, piece number 3, he deals with the problem in this top paragraph you see, the last word of the first line. Gam dvar hasuda kasha. The whole problem with the Suda of Achashverosh is a big problem. Ki lefi hanireh einenu kol כך chomer lahavi alein kol yom charetz. What's the big deal that they went to a party? This is a famous question. Manos Halevi is the one who asked this question. What's the big Aveda where they went to a party? Now, so he gives 2 paragraphs of explanation over here. In the first paragraph of the explanation, he makes a deal on the word nehenu. And I'll summarize what he says in the paragraph that starts with Heim Amru. He makes a deal that says it's the enjoy. The enjoy means that they weren't really forced to go in. By Nebuchadnezzar, there was an earlier story where Nebuchadnezzar forced people to bow down and forced people to do Avodah Zarah. But this wasn't a matzah here. They weren't forced, so it was by choice. And because it was by choice, that's what really makes it bad. Now, when we read this answer, we have to ask ourselves, are we satisfied with that answer? He asked a question. He asked a big question. His question was, because Nanim and Sudasa Shoyf Russia, so such a big deal? And what was the answer? Yeah, because they weren't forced. All right. But that's what he does. That's his answer there. And he goes further. He says, by the way, there's another thing. What's the deal? This is the next paragraph. V'oid higdilu is going to another thing. He says like this. What's the deal? Russia. Trying to say this. We know Achashverosh is a Russia. So what's the Gemara trying to say when it says a Russia? So you know what Gemara is trying to say? It's like this. The meal, the suda, was a wicked suda. And this has to do with the different Mamare Chazal of why Achashverosh made a party. So he brings one thing, he made a party because the 70 years ended and the Beis Hamikdash wasn't built, and so therefore he got excited about that. And then he gives another thing because treasure was found, and he was very happy about that. Or it's because he was using the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, and so he was excited about that. And so he brings these reasons, and then the Manos Halevi, Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz says, so that's why, Russia. Yeah, look at some of these reasons he's celebrating the Churban, he's using the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, and another reason he brings, which I failed to mention a second ago, is he found the Kisei of Shlomo Melech, and he built a replica to sit on it. So that's also, he's trying to undermine Yidden and what Yidden were doing, and so therefore, it's a Suda of a Rasha, and Yidden should have ran away from it with a 10-foot pole. They they shouldn't have touched this thing, and he goes on to say that there's this concept of the Gemara says that if you live in Chutz La'aretz, it's kilu that you're Oved Avodah Zarah B'Tara. So you do. So what is it? Why am I Oved Avodah Zarah B'Tara? So the Gemara explains: you live among goyim, he's going to invite you to his meal. And his meal ends up being a thanksgiving for his God or whatever it is, and so you end up collaborating on some level with this thing. So he says that's what was really happening here. That Achashverosh was making a suda that was treif, not but the food treif. He doesn't really care so much about that. The treif in the sense of the Churban Beis Hamikdash and celebrating the Churban and subjugating the Jews, and you're celebrating that, and so therefore it's really bad, and so that's why this is the answer to his question of why the Jewish people are subject to such a big punishment. Now again, you have to ask yourself, well, does that really answer the question? Because as you're going to see, the Rebbe brings this, but is not satisfied with the answer. Okay, so those are the three paragraphs that you have over here. Was in paragraph 1 you had question, paragraph 2 you had question, answer number 1, and in paragraph 3 you had question number 2. All of these the Rebbe is going to quote. So now let's go into the Sikha. This is a very famous Sikha from the Rebbe. Lekut Sikha is Chelek Lamed Aleph. We're at the beginning here. We're going to learn jump around a little, and just do a few bits and pieces. So let's read text 4. Isa Meseches Megillah, steht Meseches Megillah. Shalu Talmid of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Talmidim asked Rabbi Shimon, Mipnei is Chayvu Sanein Shal Yisrael Shabayisei Adar kill you. Why did the Yidden, the Gemara uses the enemies of Yidden, but it's a euphemism. Why were the Yidden destined to be destroyed in that generation? What was the bigger deal? Enfet the Gemara, Mipnei Shenenu Misudasa Shalayisei Rasha, because they took part and enjoyed the Suda of Achashverosh. Frek the Gemara in Cain Shebeshushan Yargu Shebachol Elam Kulay Al Yargu. 1 second. So then kill the people who went to the Suda. Who are the people who went to the Suda? Only the Yidden and Shushan. The rest of the world not. And for the Gemara, Mipnei Sheishtachvu L'Tzelem. No, it's a different thing. That the Jewish people bow down to the Tzelem. I don't recall if this is a reference to the Tzelem on Haman, or if it's a Tzelem in some other instance with Nebuchadnezzar, or some other Tzelem. And either way, it had to do with Avodah Zarah, and so therefore they were destined to be destroyed. So fact is the Shaila, what about all Yidden? So the answer is, the Rebbe is going to say later in the Sikha, and the Gemara says, when it comes to Avodah Zarah, then it's like, okay, a few of you did the Chet HaEgel, boom, all of you are gone. So we have precedent for this idea of eradicating the Jewish people, Chas v'Shalom, if there's Avodah Zarah. But you don't have that precedent for another type of Avera, and that's how the Gemara works this out. Now, the Gemara, so the Rebbe is going to ask about the first answer. But Pashtus, when you say Nanas, the first thing that comes to mind is not kosher food. The lashon of the Medrash is that the Jewish people put their lives in danger because Hashem was going to punish them. Pashat for goyish food. So now we have a very famous question. Ha'ara 3, one of the sources who asked this question, Manos Halevi. Okay. So what's the question? Is eating shreifah food such a serious thing? So the shaila that the Rebbe asks is the shaila from the Manos Halevi. Now the Rebbe comes in and answer, Yesh Mefarshim. Some people answer, who's the Yesh Mefarshim here? Manos Halevi. The Mekiva in Shemishte ze asach asher shal bittul binyan hamikdash lishtamish bahem, what we saw in the third paragraph, because it was celebrating the downfall of Beis Hamikdash. Im ken kol mi shenena me'is suda hu yoyre. If you take part in the suda, it shows shu sameach hachurban hamikdash, shows that you're enjoying the churban hamikdash, you're happy about it, or at least you're not sad about it, and therefore you deserve it. The answer is not good enough. We're talking about the Gzeiras, Kloya, Rahman al-San, Hakelel, it's we're talking about even children. People that are not even chiyuv to do mitzvahs and definitely don't have oinshim. Megilas Esther says clearly that the Gzeira of Haman was al ha'am kulay minar v'azakin tavanashim. V'im kain v'ishlam im nischav v'kloya mipnei shishtach v'letzalam. If it's in Yinav Avodah Zarah necha, we understand it. As the Mefarshim all explained, the Avodah Zarah shaykh shaper kloya kamay be'egel. Avodah Zarah shaykh to say that the whole nation is wiped out. We saw that by the egel, where it says in the pasuk v'achalo isan karaga. Hashem says, I'm going to wipe out the people in a second. How could you say that because of Hana, they weren't sensitive enough about the Aveilus of the Beis Hamikdash? So the Rebbe, sorry, I'm not happy with the answer. It's not good enough of an answer. So therefore, the Rebbe goes on in this sikha to introduce a new concept. This new concept is not the Manos Halevi. Outside, the kids of the Rebbe says like this: that really, the Shmira of Yidden, there's a mashal of the wolf to get the 70 wolves with the lamb. And there's this, the Roman emperor has a conversation and says that, it's interesting that the wolves are not devouring, the 70 wolves are not devouring the lamb. So it must be that the wolves are kind and they don't want to devour the lamb. To which the Tana responded and said, no, it's the Eibishter who's protecting the lamb for the 70 wolves. So in other words, and the Rebbe goes on to explain this sikha, you want to go by teva, or to say the way elikus is melubish in teva, then there's wolves and there's a sheep, and the result of that is, even as elikus is melubish in teva, that they're going to devour the sheep, and the Jewish people are not going to be there. That's that. So where does the Shmira of Yidden come from? Shmira of Yidden comes from a Shmira of the Eibishter Slamayla Me'atava, and it's almost, you could say, a nest. It's a constant nest, just like Kriyas Yamsuf is happening every second. There's a constant nest where the Eibishter is warding off the enemies of the Jewish people, enabling them to survive. Okay. So now, when could that happen? When the Jewish people turn and recognize the Eibishter is the key to their survival. So now it's good, because the Jewish people are recognizing this truth. So the Eibishter says, I'm happy to continue that truth because the Jewish people are living that truth. And that truth is lived by when we recognize that as any effort we do in Derech HaTeva, at the end of the day we know it's just a keli. The main thing is connecting to the Eibishter. We recognize he's the source of our security. Okay. What happened in Ma'aseh of Purim? The Rebbe is going to say the Ma'aseh of Purim was Yidden went to Sudas Shalas Rasha. It was by choice. They weren't forced. And he's going to cite the Manos Halevi because we saw that Manos Halevi made that point. Oh, okay, fine. So Yidden, the important ones, I don't know exactly how to deal with that. But Yidden go to the party. And in what way do they go? What's their attitude? They went by choice. And why? Nenu is choice, but it's also, these are our guys. These are our protectors. These are people we could rely on. And, so they're throwing away the perspective that my Shmira is coming from Hashem. So the Eibishter says, not that I'm happy with the Eibishter saying this, but this is the reality. The Eibishter says, okay, so if you're denying the fact that I'm Shomer, that I'm guarding L'mayla Me'ateva, you're happy with Teva? Okay, so let Teva let it play out the way I'm a Lubish in Teva. And you know what the result is? Gzeras Haman. So the Rebbe says, it's not an oynish. That's the problem. When you look at the Eibishter looked down, and he saw the Yidden doing a Suda. Oh, he got so mad, I need to punish them. And then the model doesn't work out, because there's no oynish that deserves Gzeras Haman. So it's not an oynish. What is it? It's nature. It's Pasha nature. If you hit me, it hurts, right? It's not a punishment. That's a teva. So al derech zeh, when the Jewish people take their eyes off Hashem as their security, so the natural result is that security is not there for them anymore. So it wasn't an oynish, it was taken no avera on the level of oynish. It was just a natural result of their mindset. The key to this is that they went to the party by choice. They went to the party by choice shows that they're putting their trust in the human beings around them rather than Hashem. Where does the Rebbe get the idea that it was by choice and not coercion? The Rebbe cites the Manos Halevi. Okay? So, in one way, the Rebbe asks the Kshaila the Manos Halevi. The third paragraph with the answer, the Rebbe rejects that answer. In other words, to say, it was so bad because they enjoyed it. Or it was so bad because it was a choice. Or it was so bad because it was based on Mikdash. No, the Rebbe is not accepting that if you're still working within the Oynish model. But if you're not working within the Oynish model anymore, you're working in the cause and effect model, then the Manos Halevi is very helpful in the sense that he gives us this idea that it was a choice, and then the Rebbe interprets what that choice is. Choice of putting tiftuchu v'ndivim, and that's where it is. So let's read, it's a longer sikha, let's read the key paragraph in the top of page 2. Or kilya, ki einoi begeder oynesh achas not oynesh. This natural outcome of the Jewish people. The natural state of Jews after Haman assumed his position was similar to as one lamb is among 70 wolves. It's interesting. The Mashmal says before Haman, not. In other words, we don't have to. Lavdafke every single moment in human history is a massive of 70 wolves trying to devour us. Sometimes 70, sometimes 60, sometimes 20, maybe sometimes none. But sometimes yes. And when the Jewish people in the time of Haman, once Haman was a prime minister, then it was that type of massive.
What happened after the Sunnah?
Next line.
Good child. Because it says that everyone was given what they wanted. It kind of emphasizes the point that people did
choice.
Yeah.
So the Manos Halevi makes a big deal out of it. I didn't read the paragraph, but if you go back to the second paragraph in number 3, you'll see that in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th line of that, he says, he brings that idea that they weren't forced to eat or drink anything that they wouldn't have wanted to. Okay, so now in terms of your question, though it happened before, that shows that was their state of mind even the whole time. That's the way the Rebbe is saying. So in other words, they had that state of mind earlier. The wolves weren't here yet, mamish. Okay? But they had that state of mind. Then the wolves came. Okay, so that state of mind together with the wolves equals the negative result. But so the point is that nenu misadase shlala, that was shalala hashmira anisis the galare. That removed automatically the miraculous protection of the great shepherd. They're like, it's so good that we were invited by the Rasha, and they took pleasure in it. This proved that his presence was so important by them. For them it was like an honor. And they enjoyed it. It wasn't forced. They felt intrigued and important by being invited. Here the Rebbe is assigned to the Manos Halevi. You're taking into consideration the 70 wolves. And you enjoy what you're getting from him. So then, so you like him. Okay, so you want his, you have his protection. So you're pushing away God's protection. So you lower yourself under the natural protection of the Zeivim, which in certain situations is Shailos Kiyuma Shalak Kivsa, means that the Kivsa is going to be gone. Now, does it mean you shouldn't have gone to party? No. Esther has the right perspective. This is so many of the sikhs, not to go too much into this. She goes to Achashverosh and she asks for the salvation of the Jewish people, but she does it in a way where she's fasting and she recognizes the Iker is Hashem, which is why she's happy to fast, even though she's not going to look as pretty when she's coming to Achashverosh. So I'm making the Keli, but it's a whole different perspective. I'm doing this not because I'm relying on you, I'm relying on Hashem, and I know that Hashem is telling me to do this. Okay, so this is our first sample of where the Rebbe taps into a sugya that the Manos Halevi deals with, and the Rebbe goes a little bit in a different direction, but rooted in and based on the Manos Halevi. Okay, now this was exciting because in number 5, you can tell there's a picture. So this is back to the first print, and let's read a little inside because there's a machlokes in the Gemara. Let's start on the first line. So the Megillah says Achashverosh was a melech mehoidu v'ad kush. Pligi ba b'Gemara Rav and Shmuel. You have a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Chad Amar, one view says, Hoidu b'soif oilam v'chush b'soif. One says one is on one side of the world, one's on the other side of the world. Very far away from each other. Chad Amar, the other one said, we assume it's Rav is the first man to Amar, so Shmuel is the second one. Hoidu v'chush gabe hadadi kam. You know, Hoidu and Chush are right next to each other. It's Manhattan and Brooklyn. And the vort is, Hoidu v'kush, Kishem shamalach, Hoidu v'kush, just like he was king over Hoidu v'kush, and it was easy for him to be king over them because they were so close to each other. Kach malach al olam kulei, so too he is the king over the whole world. In other words, according to the second opinion may be a little funny, but if you think about it, the way the Rebbe explains it is, the pasuk says he was a king over Sheva v'Esr Meo Medina. You want to say a vast realm? I know that already. What's what is that adding? The second opinion is bothered by that. Therefore, the second opinion comes to say, no, it's not about vastness. You get that from Medina. This is about the degree of control that he had. Everyone understands that a king, by his capital city, right, or in a place where if you have two cities right next to each other, and you live in one, you have a lot of control over the next one. So he had that very tight control over his entire empire. That's the var to the second opinion. Okay? First opinion is two sides of the world. Okay. Now, says Rabbi Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz writes like this: Kosav Harav HaChosid, I don't know, something, Harav Reb Moshe ibn Tibbon. Okay, Moshe ibn Tibbon is a very famous person. Why is he a famous person? Because this is the family of translators that translated all the classic Sfarim that were written in Arabic. They translated it to Lashon Kodesh. Rasag Zamonis V'Deus was written in Judeo-Arabic. They're the ones who translated. Chovos HaLevavos they're the ones who translated. Rambam's Mer Nevuchim, Rambam's Sefer HaMitzvos, Rambam's Pirush HaMishnah. All of these were written in Judeo-Arabic, and this family, there's three different generations. There is Yehuda, Shmuel, and Moshe. So he is Moshe. And he writes the Sefer Peah. Now guess what? We don't have a Sefer Peah. Sefer Peah is lost. But here we have a quote from him. He gives us an exact quote of Moshe ibn Tibbon. Yesh l'tzmai. That's a very interesting question. Why are they arguing about this? What are they arguing about? Where Hoidu and Kush is? Pull out a map and let's know where's Hoidu and where's Kush. There's a machlekes metzias. What's going on over here? Why is there a debate? The same thing it says by Shlomo Melech, the same thing that he was a king from Tifsach to Aza, and Rav and Shmuel, the same debate. One says Tifsach is one here and Aza is here. The other one says Tifsach and Aza are right next to each other. What's going on over here? The truth is, there's no debate. There's no machlekes and metzias. Both agree that Hoidu and Kush are right next to each other. They're arguing in the implication of how you're including the whole world. This is where they disagree. Chad Amar, one view says Kishem Shamalach Mahoidu Vad Kush Kach Malach Al Kol Chad Amar Hoidu B'Soif. It's on one end. Ki Davar Yadua Ki Haaretz Kadurius. It is known, well known, that the world is round. Ibn Tibbon is before Columbus. The Ein Soif L'sidur ki'im l'kador ki'im b'makam asher yaschol mimenu. What's he saying over here? There's no machlekes metzias. Everyone, look at this picture. Everyone agrees Hoidu and Kush are right next to each other. Now the shaila is, how do you count? One guy says Hoidu and Kush are right next to each other, so just like in here and here, so too the whole world with the control argument that I gave you earlier. The other view says no, it's coming to tell you vastness, so it's mehoidu ve'ad Kush. So it doesn't end up being a machlekes metzias. He goes on to say that he quotes from a Medrash Lecha Dodi. This is it's a pirush that was written by Reb Tuvia Bereb Eliezer, I believe somewhere in Ashkenaz or in Italy, and Lecha Dodi on the Megillah, who basically ends up saying the same thing. That no one is disagreeing of where Hoidu is and where Kush is. You take a map, you know exactly what it is. But the question is, how do you want to look at it? Okay, so then he puts a picture.
How is it understood? It's India and Ethiopia, no?
Yeah, I mean that's what comes to us most naturally. The problem with that is they're not next to each other.
Right, there is a place in Afghanistan called Hindu Kush, still today.
Right. So is it two cities?
No. Hindu Kush. That's the name of the area, still today. I read it in several different travel areas. People.
Okay, so maybe it's one of those other. Maybe that's the machlokes. He's not saying. He's saying Kuli Allah is right next to each other. But yeah, this Hoidu we say, typically today we say India. Kush we say Ethiopia. So then, what does that mean? But yeah, I didn't look too much into these sources, and that's
That's the official size of the Persian Empire.
the official size is from Eastern Africa to India. Yeah. All right.
However, for Greece and a little bit of Europe.
Okay. So at the end, he writes, and V'halachatzura, if you go down, it's like the third of the narrow lines at the end. V'halachatzura l'havin divrei. I'll give you a picture. So he gives us this wonderful picture of Hoidu and of Kush with the round situation. Now, the Rebbe has a sikha about Rav and Shmuel, because the Rebbe does a lishitase with Rav and Shmuel. The Rebbe shows that Rav is very concerned about the literal meaning of the word. And that's what prevails for Rav. Even if it's going to sacrifice in terms of the general understanding of the pasuk. Shmuel's the opposite. Shmuel says, I'm not going to get hunkered down on words. I want the general context of the pasuk to make sense. And so therefore, the Rebbe does a lishitase. In our case, the Rebbe explains, because we have another one, Paroi, Vayokam Elach Chadash HaMitzrayim, Rav and Shmuel. One says Chadash, not Chadash Manos. The Rebbe does the same thing. If you go by the word Chadash, new is new. But if you look at the whole context, it doesn't really make so much sense, and that's why Shmuel wants to say. So Shmuel is looking at context. So that's what's happening here. You have Shavav Esr Meo Medina. That gave you vastness already. I don't need Mahoidu Vlad Kush for vastness. So if you're looking at the context of the pasuk, like it's extra, and so therefore you say it's coming to teach something else. So you say, okay, they're next to each other, and it's coming to talk about the nature of his control. Rav says, what are you talking about? Hoidu Ve'ad Kush. Va'ad. If you go to the literal word Va'ad, it sounds like from here all the way to here, and so it's a better taich in the word. And the Rebbe does this in a number of machlokes and of Rav and Shmuel. And so when the Rebbe is doing that, he quotes this Manos Halevi in the footnote. That you should know, it's not a machlokes and Metzias. He says in footnote 22, Rei Manos Halevi b'tchilasei, Shehevi me'arav, Reb Moshe ibn Tibun u'medrash l'kachtov, Deloi pligi b'Metzias, u'lekul yama hoida v'chush, Bahadi hadadi hava, and then he sends you to the Yavitz as well. So that's item number 2. Item number 3 is actually about a minute. So here we'll start with the Sikh of the Rebbe rather than starting with Manos Halevi. The Rebbe had a big koch that everyone should say Ach Tzadikim. And one of the times the Rebbe spoke about this, I think it was Tavshim Amdalad, that everyone should be a thing, everyone should say Areinu Mekabel, and everyone should also say at the end of Dain Ach Tzadikim, because most Nuschos don't have Ach Tzadikim at the end. It's from the Arizal that you should say it. So in this Sikh the Rebbe says as follows, B'soif HaTfilah, La'ach the drei psukim of Altira and Utsu Eitza and Vazikna. These are in 3 different places in Tanakh. Was mezak nach aleinu kiberoy sidurin kekulam. Was die psukim seinen euch verbunden mit bittul kol gzeires. These psukim are about being mevatel gzeires against Yidden. Wie steht in Medrash? It says in Medrash the story of Mordechai, that Mordechai met the kid. And they said these 3 psukim, so for sure, Hamas Ger is going to be this battle. So you see, there's a connection between Bittul Agzera and these psukim. That's why we say it. Why do we say these 3 psukim b'Seif HaTfilah? Because we want to talk about Agzera. So the Rebbe goes on to say, so therefore we should also add Ach Tzadikim. Okay. Now, so the makar of these 3 things, these 3 psukim, the makar that we say it, in footnote 17, the Rebbe sends us to Shara Koilo. Shara Koilov, from the Rebbe's grandfather's grandfather, Rebbe Avram David Lavut. He wrote a sefer on the Minhagim and the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, and he writes. So let's look at number 8. What does he say? Altira mipachad kavu. Ach
Tzadikim is why?
Ach tzadikim is late. The Rebbe also says that it's also good for security for Am Yisrael, but I don't remember. It's the Hemshech of the Sikha. But that's not from this source. Okay, says Shara Koilov. Altira mipachad kavu apsukim bechan alpi Megilas Esther Parsha Zayin. So these are the 3 psukim from the Medrash, the famous Medrash about Mordechai and the children. Now he says, B'tzipoidin Shomer Azulai, this is a very interesting lashon. This is the Chidah. The Chidah's name is Chaim Yosef David Azulai. He lived in the time of the Baal Shem Tov. He has many svarim. One of them is called Tzipoidin Shomer. So he says, Tzipoidin Shomer Azulai. Hey, in other words, Rabbi Avram David Lavot, it seems, didn't have the Manos Halevi. So he quotes from Tzipoidin Shomer Azulai, Hevi minig loymar gimel psukim elu, b'shem anshu provenzo, that's Provence, v'arav achosid, and in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Sasson, the Sefer Manos Halevi me'marinu arav Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz v'aramas. Okay, so he brings the Chidah, who brings all these sources. So now let's go to the Manos Halevi, and we'll see, because this is the earliest source that we have. We don't have Rabbi Yehuda ben Shushan. We don't have svarim from him. This is another example of something that's going to be preserved in Manos Halevi that otherwise we wouldn't have had. So he writes over here, the first line in 9, Rav Yehuda ibn Susan. By the way, in terms of when he lived, the Rosh had a son named Yehuda. He was the Tshuvas Zichron Yehuda. So he lived in the 1300s. This is his Talmud. So he's living in the late 1300s, early 1400s. So he wrote, Kasa Babira Maimer Azeh, so he wrote on the Megillah, he writes as follows, Mizeh Yunoigim Anshe Provenza, Loimar B'chol Yom B'Seit Tzilasan Gimel Eila V'chein Ani Noye. There you go. So here you have the makar, the oldest makar for the meaning of saying these three psukim, comes from the Manos Halevi, quoting Rabbi Yehuda ibn Shushan. The Rebbe doesn't quote directly from the Manos Halevi, sends you to Shara Koilo, who sends you to the Manos Halevi. Okay, let's move to the next item. The next item we have as follows. This is a thing that Rebbe has dozens and dozens of times in the Sichos of Purim, is this item that you have over here. And this is a big theme in the Sefer Manos Halevi. It appears in at least 3 different areas and perhaps more. In order to keep things short, we're not going to read, let's just notice that Manos Halevi in Gimel Ches and Tes, he's quoting the Rameh. The Rameh over here is Meir Arama. Meir Arama. Meir Arama is the son, you may have heard of the Akedas Yitzchak. Akedas Yitzchak is a sefer that was written in Spain in the 1400s. It's quoted sometimes in Chassidus. That's what we know in Hachodesh, Samach Vav. He quotes Pirush Akedah, so that's how we know the Akedah. So he had a son named Reb Meir, and Reb Meir also wrote Sfarim. I believe we don't have them. So he writes over there on the pasuk. This is on the pasuk Yeshnai Am Echad Mefuzor Mefeired. But it's written a little philosophically. Go down to where you see it says in bold Yeshnai Am Echad Mefuzor Mefeired Ben Amim. So Shlashtan Amar Yeshnai Am Echad Mefuzor Mefeired Ben Amim. Heifech Toiv Hamezeg V'Teva Ha'ava V'Akurva Zebozeh. When Haman was saying Yeshnai Am Echad Mefuzor Mefeired Ben Amim, he wasn't just saying, yeah, there's a few Jews here, there's a few Jews here, there's a few Jews here. No, Haman was saying a deeper point. It was a kitru. The Lashon of the Rebbe was a kitru. Jewish people, they're divided amongst themselves. They don't get along with each other. Mefuzor or Mefeired, amongst themselves, they're divided. The Teva, Ava, and Kurva Zebozeh, they don't have. And then he can continue to say, Kinimsa Ba'avoy Neseinu Hayoim, Ki Pirude B'nei Yisrael, Zemizeh, Al Yidei Sinas Chinam Ravi, as we still have today. Jewish authors throughout the generations are always pointing out that the Sinas Chinam is still a real thing, it's still something that we're struggling with, and this is what Meir Arama is saying, that just like Haman was saying then, it's still a problem that we have now. So this is one dugma for that. That's on Perek Gimel of the Megillah. Now, go to Perek Dalet, text 11, where you see the Manos Halevi. This is on Esther. Esther tells Mordechai, Lech Knois. Yeah? Lech Knois, gather the Yidden. Zokter Pirish Adoni Avital, says my father, right? Who was his father? What was his name? Moshe. He says, my father, Ki Kivna V'zeh, his kavana was Vishareish, his Divrei Atzar Hoya. The first words that came out of Haman's mouth are Yeshnai Am Echad Mefuzor Mefeired. Ki Zeh Lahem Ra'ah Chayla. This is the sickness of the Jewish people. Pasuk, Chalak Libam Ata Yeshamu Eid. There's a pasuk in Hosea that says, Chalak Libam. Their hearts have been divided. Ata Yeshamu, now they're going to sin. Pshuto Shemikra means divided, meaning away from Hashem, separated from Hashem. But here already you see an early Pirush saying that no, divided amongst themselves. And then Ata Yeshamu, so then that's the big Aveira. And this was the problem. And then he goes to say, and he quotes the Meir Arama that he said earlier. Why did Haman attack them now? Because he found them Mefuzarim Mufaradim, separated from another. Jump to the next line. Haman would never be able to overcome the Yidden if they were Ba'askama Achas. If they were Ba'achtos, they wouldn't be. Therefore, Esther tells Mordechai, let's fix the problem. Bring all the Yidden together. Now, the next paragraph. Now Manos Halevi is adding on his father. It's not only bring them together for a show of actos, no. Bring them together that they should start thinking alike. That they should be one in mind and heart. If there's jealousy, if there's hatred, if there's unwanted competition, so let them bring peace. And then he says a beautiful taich in a pasuk. We say, But that we mean over here in Pshuto Shemikra, we mean with this pasuk is that the Eibishter creates all of our hearts, and the Eibishter creates all of our deeds. When we say Yachad in Tehillim, the word Yachad appears many, many times in Tehillim, and usually it means all of it. That's what it means. But he says, Amrin Yerushalmi, he brings Yerushalmi, Omer Rabrechra said, Yoitzron roitze sheyehei libam yachad elav. Hayoitzer yachad libam means the Eibishter wants that Yidden, and the Pshuta of the Yerushalmi is, their heart should be fully dedicated to Hashem. He adds, Mistaber li shekavanas hakasav lefi dvarav hayoitzer roitze sheyehei libam yachad elav. God wants the Jewish people should be ba'achtos with each other. Va'oz me'evin al kol ma'aseim. Then the Eibishter is going to be looking and understanding what you need and giving you what you need. So it's a whole progression of 3 layers of what this pasuk means. And Pshuta Shemikra and the Yerushalmi and him. Let's focus on him. Hayoitzer yachal libam. The Yoitzer wants azol zayin yachal libam. U'yemol hameivin al kol ma'aseim. Yemol is he going to say, okay, what do they need? Let me give them the things that they need. And therefore, this is what Esther was saying. So this is example 2 of the theme of unity that you have in Manos Halevi, which is a major theme in his book. Example 1 was when Haman first spoke. Example 2 is when Esther speaks. And I'll look at example 3 all the way at the end of the Megillah and Perek test. He writes like this. When the people in the open city celebrated Purim, they did Mishlayach Manos. Why? Why did they do Mishlayach Manos? They were symbolizing that they're one. Uva'ava, love, achva, brotherhood. Exactly the opposite of what Haman was saying. And therefore the next passage says that Mordechai wrote. In other words, if you look at the Megillah, it's interesting. Mishlayach Manos is before Mordechai said anything. Normally, if you had to say it, or the way I had to say it, I would say, yes, so there was a big simcha, and then Mordechai came and said, made takanas, and one of the takanas was Mishlayach Manos. If you look at the psukim, it says, and the Yidden in Shushan, and they celebrated, and the Yidden in the Prazim, they celebrated, and Mishlayach Manos. And then, Vayichtav Mordechai. So he writes, Vayichtav Mordechai, Berad Divrei Bnei Shushan b'Yom he agreed with Bnei Shushan, they didn't do Yom Tif. The Prazim, it says they did Yom Tif. So he agreed, Shushan shouldn't, we're not going to call it a Yom Tif like Pesach, then it was going to be Isra Malacha, we're not going to do that. The Divrei Bnei HaPrazim b'Mishlayach Manos Yishlayer, but he agreed with the people in the cities, in the open cities, that there should be Mishlayach Manos, which you don't see the people of Shushan doing. And he added also Matanas Lavyonim to do another thing that you don't see them doing, and the reason for that was, Pashut, he says, this is the best way of praising Hashem, is by doing Matanas Lavyonim. Okay. So here you have this theme of unity. It appears in 3 different places and it's a big arichas, by the way. It's mamish in a big arichas. The Rebbe throughout the years quoted this many, many, many times. Literally, I found 30 examples. So here I'll just do a few samples. So first, all the way back on Kutta Sichas Chelek Beis, page 536, the Rebbe says like this. The mitzvahs von Shlayach Manos und Matanas Lavyonim in Purim seien solche Inyanim, was stellen sich auf nur durch der Achtus von Vereinigung von ein Id mit Azeiten. These 2 mitzvahs, Shlayach Manos and Matanas Lavyonim, you could only accomplish them together with brotherhood with other people. It's interesting, the Rebbe adds Matanas Lavyonim into this. He didn't. He sees Matanas Lavyonim more about praising Hashem. The best praise for Hashem is when you support poor people. The Rebbe puts Matanas Lavyonim into the same boat as Mishlayach Manos. Notice Ha'ara 8, where the Rebbe sends you to Manos Halevi. Was das ist a Tikkun auf der Kittrug, was ist dann gewesen auf Iden, als Jeschna Yam Echad Mefuz und Refer. Iden was eine Am Echad, seine Chassash Ham Mefeuret und zertelt, eine von seinen Iden are divided. That's what Haman said. Auf dem sein in der Mitzvah von Mishlayach Manos und Matanas Lavyonim zu beweisen und verstärken die Vereinigung von Iden. Okay, that's one example. By the way, the Rebbe, when he quotes this, sometimes Manos Halevi, also the Nesivos, HaMishpat, I think his last name is Rabbi Yaakov of Lisa, lived a little 200 years later. He also wrote a sefer on Purim called Megilas Esther, and he says a very similar word. So many of the sichos, it's Manos Halevi and then Megilas Esther right after. Okay, in Tavshem Mem Zayin, look at source number 14. Here the Rebbe says as follows. There's a difference between Chanukah and Purim. By Chanukah, the Gzeira wasn't the same on all Yidden. Why? Because let's say a Yid was not Shomer Torah mitzvah so much, so the Gzeira didn't really affect him. By Gzeiras Haman affected all the Yidden. So let's read inside. Mashaking Gzeiras Haman is going to have alle Yidden gleich. Kol Yidden in Arva Zok and Tafanashem. Warum das ist gewinn bichtem aber sein Gzeira Gufim? Because Haman wanted to destroy the bodies. Their etzem Existenz als Iden Rachman al-Aslan. Nicht gucken dich auf die Darga von Gilei und Neshama. Was das ist dem sein? Was in dem sein alle Yidden gleich. The Gzeira of Haman was it's interesting because it was equality. It was, in a sense, it was all of you guys are equal. Ante Yachis, it's not equality. Ante, you're a Jew, I hate you. You're a good Jew, right? He's picking and choosing. Haman is like, I'm against everyone equally. Und der Riber is the Eitzah of Arabnehme die Gzeira gewen. Lech kenoises kol Yudim. You take away the Gzeira by responding in a corresponding way for einzigen Yidin, and nicht nur a geistige for einzigen Beruchnius, nor euch over iker a gashmistige for einzigen von die Gufim. You have to have all the bodies together. Because the Gzeira was against the bodies, and the Gzeira was against all of them equally, so you're going to fix it within that model of equality, of unity, and the Rebbe in the footnote points to the Manos Halevi. And one
Rebbe makes the same thing with the Nazis, is that we should love every Jew the way they...
Yeah, there's a line from Jonathan Sachs that he says in his Hesped and Gimel Tammuz in London. He said he presented it because we heard it right after he passed away. People sent it out. He said that it's his own gedank. He says what motivated the Rebbe, and this is the line.
What did the Rebbe say?
I don't believe so. You can check. I don't believe so. I think he said yeah. But I hear what he's saying. There's a certain connection there. Now, in 15, I'll just summarize outside. The Rebbe brings from Trumas Hadeshen, which is an earlier source. This is from Yisrael Israelin in Germany, who gives a different reason for Mishloach Manos. He says Mishloach Manos is a din in Sudas Purim. Yid, you want to help people make Sudas Purim, even if they're not an Edgin, but you want to help them out, that it should be more elaborate. So you do Mishloach Manos, you help you do Sudas Purim. The Rebbe says there's an Afkamina between Manos Halevi and Trumas Hadeshen. According to Manos Halevi, it's enough that you send Mishloach Manos. You pick up the phone, you say, by the way, I sent it to you. When am I going to get it? In a month, you're going to get it. Doesn't matter. The Kiruv and the Achtus happened already, because you know that I'm sending it to you, or even if you don't know. I sent it to you b'poyel, so I feel close to you, so that's already a Kiruv, so that's good enough. The guy doesn't have to receive it today. You can say, Mishloach Manos, you can get after. It's a good shayla halacha. Do you need to receive Mishloach Manos on Purim, or is it enough just to send it? Trumas Hadeshen, it's a din in Sudas Purim. It has to be there by there. So that gives a nigla dika nafkamina between these two reasons. That's number 15. Okay. Now, let's for now skip 18. If we have time, we'll come back. Let's now go to 16. Oh, anyway, that's the next one. Okay, let's go to 16. So the Manos Halevi says like this. It's in Perek Tes. He's quoting a Ramban, and he writes like this. So, the Ramban says another thing. It's because this miracle happened outside Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, God's name is not in the Megillah. It's only in the Rashi Tevis. Where is it? In the words Yavai, Hamelech, V'Haman, Hayoim. If you look at those 4 words, it's Yud, K, Vav, K, and Mipi, Hamelech, Ufnei, Haman, Chafu. Hamelech ufnei Haman is Hey Vav Hey, and I don't remember the word right before Hadavar Yatsa Mipi Hamelech. So Yatsa Mipi Hamelech ufnei Haman. We're missing the word Yatsa here. Is also Yud K Vav K, and yeah, we have a mem in the middle, but it's not masik because it's Mipi Hamelech. It's the mouth of the Melech, so it's part of the word of the Hey. And so you have 2 times where you have a Rasha Tevis for God's name in the Megillah. I believe in last week's shir we mentioned the famous concept that Hashem's name is not mentioned in the Megillah. Even Ezra's reason is because, I think I said this, not. Even Ezra's reason is, he's the first one I believe to talk about this, is because it was assumed that this book's going to come a Persian book. They don't want God's name in the Persian archives, so therefore they kept the name out. The Maharal's reason, this is the famous reason that we all know, I believe it comes from the Maharal, where it's because God was operating through nature. Okay, so you have one thing, you have a Ramban here. I didn't know this Ramban. No one knows this Ramban? Because there's no such Ramban. We don't have this Ramban. This Ramban was also lost. That's why Manos Halevi Mamish collects a lot of stuff. He has a whole Ramban over here. We don't have this Ramban from anywhere else. The truth is, there's one other source that also quotes the Ramban from the same era. But it's amazing. He brings a beautiful reason, a third reason from the Ramban, because the implication is a nace outside Eretz Yisrael doesn't deserve Hashem's name. I don't know if I fully understand that. Well, why not? God's right. Okay, but that's the reason. Now, this is quoted in a Maimer of the Alter Rebbe. This is a quote in a Maimer of the Alter Rebbe. It's a very short it's actually not a very short Maimer, but we're going to read a very short piece. Number 17. Sagt Alter Rebbe, Hine Iker Ma Palas Haman, Hi Bema Sha'asasa Esther Seuda Shnia. When did Haman fall? At the second meal. Ba'amra, about which Esther said, Yavoi Hamelech V'Haman Hayoim Rosh Tevis Havaya. The makar for this is the Rambam. The first one to point out the Yud Kei Vav Kei.
Can I ask you a question on the last thing? Sorry.
Sure.
Didn't all of this happen in Mitzrayim where the word had to show?
Yeah. It's good shayla.
Before Korban Bayit and Korban Bayit.
Yeah, but you go further and you say if someone has a nace here and they write the thing, so they're not supposed to be glowing. Megilas Esther doesn't say thank God 100 times. I don't know the answer. So Zakt Alter, the Alter Rebbe is not going to comment on why God's name is not in the Megillah. The Alter Rebbe is going to comment on why is it Yud Kei Vav Kei God. What's that that it's dafka on those words? It sounds random. Yud Kei Vav Kei. You opened up, you found the weir in some chapter. Yavai Melech Haman Yud Kei Vav Kei. What's happening here? The Alter Rebbe explains that the Mapala of Haman happened where Suda Shniya, about which Esther said Yavai Melech Haman Hayoim, which is Rosh Tevis Havaya. Now, just to clarify, Esther said that when she appeared the king. She said Yavai Melech Hayoim to Mishnah. He then came to the Mishnah. They said tomorrow. They came to the Mishnah tomorrow, and that's where Mapalas Haman. But what started the whole thing? What started it was the words Yavai Hamelech V'Haman is Rosh Tevis Havaya. So what does this mean? Shekirva Oisei Alamelech. She brought Haman to the Melech. Remember last week, Melech Na'ach HaSheresh, Melech the Eibishter. She brought Haman to the Eibishter. Lias Mishnah Lamelech. Hainu Yavai Hamelech Haman. That's Yavai Hamelech Haman. Means bringing Haman closer to the Eibishter. How? Why is bringing Haman closer to God? I'll explain outside. Siddur explains all the time the problem of evil. How does the Klippa exist? What's pshat? How does Klippa exist? It's bad. What's pshat? The Eibishter is Mahavit. It's different biurim. One classic beer that you have in Siddur is the concept of Makis. Is that you have this space within Hashem where Kaviyachol, he doesn't care. Dark and light is the same thing. Good and bad is the same thing. Yaakov and Esav is the same thing. And so therefore, on that level, which is the Makis, in Pnimius, the Mamala Kalamin, matters. The Makabel matters. You have to be worthy. If you're deserving, you get Hashpah. If you're not deserving, you don't get Hashpah. But in the Makis, there, Kachashecha Kayin of the Lashon is. So Haman, by definition, is living in that space of the Makis. And there, Rishonim could live and they can have a Riboy Shafa forever. Okay. But Medvar more in the Chitzoynius HaMakis. Why? Because in the Pnimius HaMakis, even the higher levels, you say it's more transcendent, it's more doesn't care. No. Because Pnimius HaMakis, God said, although I don't care, I chose to care. Although by Etzem I don't have to care, but I chose to care. And so therefore, this I like and this I don't like. So what we need to do is, we need to bring Haman to the Pnimius HaMakis. If we could somehow bring, I don't know exactly what it means, bring Haman, but we could bring ourselves, Haman, the generation, somehow, be Mo'oyer, the Pnimius HaMakis. Over there, Haman has no stand, he has no ability to that and to survive, and then the Gzero goes away. So Yavoi Hamelech V'Haman Hayoim, I'm bringing Haman to a party with the king, is I'm bringing Mamshich, the Pnimius HaKeser, and from there Haman's Taka is going to have a Mapala. So where is God's name in Rubens in the Megillah? At the key words, at the very key words of the strategy that Esther used to actually make the main changing of events. Although Haman's in the level of Kesed de Klippa, he's only Acharaim, and that's where he can make trouble. There lo yuchol lekabel v'yizbatel b'mtziusay legamri. Okay, so that's another example, and then we'll do one more, and with 19 and 20, we're going to finish. So, 9 o'clock, one more minute. What he says over here is very fascinating passage. He asks a simple question on Halevi. When do we celebrate Purim? On the day of the Nitzachon or the day of the Menucha? Day of the Menucha. Right? And that's why Arei Prazim was one way. Shushan, they rested another way. You have to wait till the day of rest. Why? The miracle was the day of the Nitzachon. So why don't you celebrate on the day of the Nitzachon? Or the Mochal? That's what you should do. Okay, this is a Shaila.
The miracle was the year before.
The
miracle was the
Yeah, so the next is commemorated on the day of the miracle. Commemorate on the day of the miracle. So what's his answer? His answer is it's really a whole topic for itself. A good shir for Shish al Pesach or whatever. That is this teaching that when the Malachim wanted to say Shira during Kriyas Yasef, the Eibusher says, "When you're saying Shira, might say Yodai Tfuim Bayam, my people," which some people want to say it means the Yidden, but most people assume it means the Mitzrim are drowning. Mr. Radrani, how can you say Shira right now? Oh, so you see, God, what do you mean? Parois, Mitzrayim, Rishoyim. No, God cares. God cares even about that. He doesn't want. And so therefore, he didn't let the Malachim say Shira. Says the Manos Halevi, he says, we should follow the Eibishter's ways. And we don't celebrate the Netzachim, because the Netzachim is about their downfall. And there you're happy, you're also sad. But Menucha, that's complete happiness. That's complete happiness. And so you don't want to celebrate the downfall of your enemy, and this is why we celebrate Dafka on the day of the Menucha. This is what he says over there. And the Rebbe brings this. The Rebbe actually quotes this. Why? Because it's interesting about Chanukah. By Chanukah, we normally say, what does Chanukah mean? Chanu Chavhei. Chanu Chavhei means that the war finished on Chav Dalet, and Chavhei was the day of Menucha. So if so, then you can come to the same Shaila, the same question. Okay. The Rambam, when you learn the Rambam Hilchos Chanukah, it's very clear, he doesn't accept it. The Rambam says that the Netzachim happened on Chavhei. On Chavhei. So now we see that with Chanukah, you're celebrating the day of the Netzachim. Purim, Rambam must agree that you're celebrating the day of Menucha. So now, according to the Rambam, you have a real question. Purim, you're celebrating the day of Menucha. Chanukah, you're celebrating the day of Netzachim. Why? So the Rebbe quotes the Manos Halevi, and he says, Manos Halevi, what does he say? He says, you're not celebrating by Chanukah, you're not celebrating the Netzachim, you're celebrating the Menucha. Doesn't tell us why the Manos Halevi says it. You have to go look in the source to see why. The Hom HaPalos and Shor Shoyim, and the Rebbe doesn't quote. But the Rebbe goes on to say that you can explain it as follows. Chanukah is a Nes L'Malam Derech HaTava. Because Chanukah is a Nes L'Malam Derech HaTava, the day of the Netzachim is like, wow, a Nes happened today. So you celebrate today. Purim, there's no Nes L'Malam Derech HaTava. What are you celebrating? The Netzachim. Okay, you celebrate tomorrow on the day of the Menucha. There was no miracle that was L'Malam Derech HaTava today, so there's no reason to celebrate today. So that's why the Rambam has this dual approach. Where on Purim, he's like, yeah, of course, wait till the day of Menucha, and then celebrate. Miracle? There's no miracle, so you don't celebrate a non-miracle on the day of it. You don't celebrate it. At least it wasn't Megilui. Chanukah, because it was Megilui, it was Rabbi Mad Miyatim. It was Giboyim B'Yad Chalashim, because it was a miracle that was apparent. Therefore, on the day of the Netzachim as well. So the Rebbe does tap into the Manos Halevi, but without going, in a sense, the Rebbe gives a different answer. The Manos Halevi's answer of why we do Menucha is, you do the day of Menucha because we're sad about the Persians that died. The Rebbe's answer of why we do the day of the Menucha is because it wasn't a Nes. That was L'Mayla Me'atava. It was Melubish and Tava, so there's not really much to celebrate that day, so we do it on the next day. Al Kapanim, this is a sampling of a huge, now Mesifta, I think Oiz V'Hadar put out Manos Halevi with footnotes. It's 2 volumes, a huge sefer. Every pasuk he has pages and pages. He does quotes, as you can see, from many different people. He says many different things. It's a very, very interesting sefer. Came at the same century as the Mechir Yain of the Ramah, and it's a classic. All right, Al Kapanim, Afreilich and Purim, Zayin Netzachim, and Zayin Menucha.